All right, I am super excited to introduce our first speaker as part of our opening keynote, GrowthLoop's new CEO, Chris O'Neill. Chris O'Neill brings some really substantial experience to GrowthLoop. He was the managing director at Google Canada for many years. He's currently a board director at Gap. He was also previously CEO of Evernote and a key C-suite leader at Glean and Xero. And so we are super proud to have him at GrowthLoop at the helm. He has been a wonderful teammate, and I really think you're going to enjoy hearing from him now. Take it away, Chris.
Welcome to the maiden voyage of GrowthLoop Live. We're at such an exciting inflection point in our industry, a new era of heightened customer expectations, a point where data clouds and AI can help marketers proactively predict customer needs, offer personalized suggestions, and deliver at exactly the right moment. It was clear that the time was right to gather some of the leading lights and change makers in our community to come together to discuss the way forward together, the technology investments that unlock the value marketers create for their companies, and the incredible experiences they create for their customers. We're honored to help shape and drive this movement. We see our role as one to help companies understand the full power of their data cloud. We see a world where intelligence is applied on top of your data cloud. We see a world where leveraging data to power incredible personalized customer experiences is frictionless and, dare we say, delightful across marketing, all the while upholding the most critical data privacy and security standards, because after all, it's your data and your cloud. Agility, intelligence, and impact together form the North Star that guide us here at GrowthLoop. Very recently, we were thrilled to launch the Loop. Marketers can, for the first time, activate campaigns with agility, accelerate their ability to infuse AI at every step of the marketing process, and perhaps most importantly, truly understand how marketing is driving true business impact. The Loop is the first step of many that combines data and AI to unleash the full power and potential of your team. And we can't wait to go on the journey with you. Today, you can expect to hear from some incredible speakers, the change makers amongst our community, our customers, and our partners. You'll hear transformational stories of how they have changed their companies from the data out. You'll also hear from our strong ecosystem of partners with whom we're incredibly delighted and lucky to work with, because we're helping make an exciting future vision a reality today. So thank you for joining us for this exciting day. Thank you to our customers and our partners for sharing their insights, their stories, their wisdom, and above all, their trust. And a special thanks to you, the change makers, for investing time with us here today and for bringing about the change and incredible value that you seek to your companies. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That was great. From here, I am super excited to introduce our keynote address. We are going to be diving into a powerful inflection point discussing this. We all told you that this was a great event for change makers. You're here in your seats thinking about the change you can drive for your organizations. And we want to talk about why this is the perfect moment to dig into just that. Our keynote is the fantastic Scott Brinker. He is one of the top leaders in martech. He has been analyzing the space since it had its, we'll call it its first major makeover, if you will, years and years ago, over 16 years ago, which is where he runs Chief Martech as well. He's also the VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot and the author of 2 best-selling books, Hacking Marketing, as well as co-author of The New Automation Mindset. So we have someone here that is going to be a fantastic voice in helping us think through this inflection point, how we want to address it, and what we can do and the opportunity. And for folks, this is fun for me because, what was it, Scott? Maybe 6 months or so ago, our roles were reversed, and we had a fun presentation as part of the great event you can run. You can share where you had to interview me. So I am so excited to turn the tables and have the conversation with you now.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Rebecca. All right, now I'm wondering, when I interviewed you for Martech Day, did I put enough pressure on you that you feel the need, like, okay, now it's some payback time, Scott?
Oh, not at all. It was such a good day. And if you have not checked out Martech Day, for folks, you absolutely should. It is such a great event. I was honored to participate, and so having the chance to have you here is just phenomenal. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, what shall we dig in on?
Yeah, so I want to start by teeing you up to talk a little bit about the SaaS landscape, the state of marketing and data tech, and what's going on and what's unique about the landscape right now. I want to start there.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I mean, certainly, the martech landscape has not gotten any smaller. If there's been one artifact that has sort of been representative of all the tremendous change that not just martech but marketing has gone through over the past decade and a half, it is this martech landscape that is now over 14,000 different products, and I can assure you we have not mapped them all. I keep hearing from new ones every week. But one of the things I'd also just point out here is it's not just martech. This same sort of explosion of software is happening in every single category. The review site G2.com, they track something like 125,000 different SaaS products out there. So yeah, just the software explosion continues unabated. Now, where this sort of leads us to today's conversation is every single one of these pieces of software operates on data. It's generating data, it's leveraging data, and this has become, over time, one of the greatest both challenges and opportunities we have. And at the same time that we see this explosion of all this software happening, we're also in the middle of a pretty significant change that's happening in the architecture of tech stacks. For a long time, every single app in, your martech stack, or more broadly, your company tech stack, was just isolated with its own little database. Maybe we're throwing some data across from one to another with, point-to-point integrations. But with the rise of cloud data warehouses and cloud data lakehouses and cloud data lakes, any variation you want thereof, we've really started to see this universal data layer emerge throughout the martech stack, throughout the larger company stack. And that's really opening up some, shall we say, very interesting opportunities in how not just the architecture of martech, but the actual operations of martech can move forward.
And so what is the role of the data layer here? What is it trying to address? Has there been a consequence of this explosion of technology, and what's the data layer's role in that?
Well, originally, cloud data warehouses were very focused on analytics, right? Okay, let's pool all this data from all these different applications and get into one location, where analytics teams are able to, in a very measured, take your time, do the data science analysis of this, help us find patterns, help us to be able to report on what was actually happening across the business. All sorts of wonderful innovations around things like predictive analytics and machine learning that were applied to these, but it was largely a system for analytics. Get more of the data from across the company and try and get more of an analytical view of how the whole works. Very helpful. We've seen a lot of advancements there. But a few years ago, what really started to change was, I keep thinking of that like Ghostbusters movie where they're like, okay, you've got the streams and then you like reverse the streams, or, we started reversing the streams of, it wasn't just about being able to get data into these cloud data warehouses, but increasingly, now that we had it pooling in one central location, having the ability to let any of those other applications, basically the frontline operations of our business, be able to pull data from that central universal data layer and be able to act on it. This is really like a huge innovation for a number of reasons. One is, we all know that integration has been one of the key things people have wanted in their tech stack years over years. And hey, the industry has made a lot of progress. As I was saying earlier, most integrations to date had sort of required you to know, like, okay, I want this specific data to come from this application, and I want this specific data to go to this other application. And the beauty of these cloud data warehouses is once you start to pool all of the data in one location, then you start to get to a much more dynamic environment where any particular application can be like, okay, well, now I want to be able to get data from this app, and this other app, and pull it together. It has the access to that data in a way that before required a heck of a lot more plumbing to make happen.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers that have gone through a similar experience where they're thinking about how can they bring this data together, what can they do with this data, and then what can it power now that they are looking all in the same place. So that makes a lot of sense. And so talk to me a little more about this ecosystem we see here, and maybe some of the negative consequences of it. Obviously, it's brought us so much good. And it's brought us so much innovation and real nuance in terms of how we can approach marketing to look at it through that lens. What are some of the negative side effects of that, and how did we get here? How should we think about that?
Yeah. Let me count the ways. So, first of all, we came from a place where every single one of these apps really did create a little silo, and from the data layer, that's what we normally think of as like, oh yeah, it had its own siloed data, and how do we get data out of that silo? But the truth is, it was more than just data that was being siloed there. One of the reasons we have thousands and thousands of different martech applications out there is because the discipline of marketing has gone through like a 2-3 decade just explosion of so many new kinds of like channels and touch points and experiences and tactics, and how do we, operationalize those behind the scenes. I mean, it's really pretty incredible. I mean, I would be hard pressed to find another profession beyond marketing that has seen so much constant, unrelenting, fast-moving change. This is one of the things that makes marketing so exciting. It's also made it pretty exhausting. But one of the ways we naturally dealt with that was we've spent so much time over the past couple decades learning the craft of these individual tactics and these individual channels. I mean, we had to, right? They're net new. You have to figure it out. You had a lot of people would specialize, in different tactics or channels. You'd have whole conferences around things like search marketing, which again was great. This is how we learned what was possible with these different channels and tactics. But I think we're starting to reach the point where we're realizing this next wave of innovation is less about the expertise and the craft in any one particular channel or touch point. It's really about the craft of how do we orchestrate these things together. And this is very much being driven by customer expectations. There's this amazing phrase I heard once, like the last best experience someone has anywhere becomes now the expectation of the experience they want everywhere, which again is just a little bit of pressure here for those of us in marketing and customer experience. But it's true, like once customers have an experience that's set by the world's best digital companies out there, it naturally raises the question for them, like, well, okay, if I'm dealing with this other company, like, why do they not seem coordinated here? Like, why are they sending me this email that's completely disconnected from their website here? And, when I called them and talked to the call center, they didn't have access. I mean, it's very frustrating to people because they now expect that companies should be able to connect these dots. And so I think this is really, the gauntlet, that's been thrown down for us is, okay, now that we've got all these individual pieces that have so much power, how do we shift more of our attention to orchestrating them together?
Oh, this is huge. So the timeline you're creating for us is this time where we've gotten such fantastic depth in our expertise. I mean, I can even think about the time across my marketing career, just seeing the depth of expertise I've observed that single marketers have achieved through their studies and crafts, to the point of expertise in the tools to enable them, which had the unattended side effect of kind of pulling us apart because we're so focused on looking down versus out. And now you're saying that from the customer's point of view, They have this expectation. They think of the most recent best customer experience they have. There are a lot of companies that are getting it really right and doing great, and so that set an expectation of why can't all my customer interactions be like that? And for companies to begin to achieve it, it sounds like it's coming together. It's okay, great. You've gone down. You've had that depth. Now, how do we bridge it together? Is that the inflection point that we're at right now? Is that what you see? What gives you the conviction that we're at the inflection point right now to finally figure this out?
Yeah, it's almost like there are two inflection points that have happened at the exact same time, and they are amplifying each other. So one is this inflection point around customer expectations. The state of, I don't want to just say the state of the art, because it's not even that bleeding edge anymore. Just, the state of digital expectations are that these different touch points a customer has with your company are going to be connected. That inflection point has hit. But in parallel, thank goodness, there's another inflection point to help us with this, is we really are at a point where the technology for this universal data layer has been in place long enough, that the different vendors who need to be able to integrate their data to this layer, some of the skills and expertise we needed to have inside our IT organizations to be able to implement and operate this universal data layer. All these things take time. And we've sort of seen over the past 5 years in particular a tremendous amount of investment, in both talent as well as products to really lean into this universal data layer. And so it's now coming to a point where the feasibility, the actionability, the pragmatic ability to actually execute with this, is here for us at the exact same moment when we're like, okay, this is the only path to delivering on those customer expectations that have now been set.
Wow, the only path is to really leveraging that data leader. So then talk to us about how that comes to life, how we can approach that. What are you seeing companies do that's really successful in terms of leveraging the data cloud to cross this and to see this forward?
Well, again, the first step is actually connecting the things that are collecting data, that are generating data, getting it into that layer. We've talked for a long time, about the quest for consolidation in the martech industry. And again, not just martech, but certainly in martech, we felt it of there's all these different applications, and if they could just consolidate into one massive super app, wouldn't life be better? It's an interesting hypothetical, but it is purely a hypothetical, because we've just seen year over year, the landscape continues to expand. Even while there's consolidation within specific companies and specific fields, they're always followed by new startups and new innovations. And particularly now with some of these technologies for AI, with coding co-pilots and all this. The pace of software creation in the world doesn't seem like it's going to be slowing down, anytime soon. So this strategy of purely waiting for consolidation isn't sufficient, So what we're starting to see is this pattern emerge again and again throughout the MarTech stack of aggregation instead of consolidation. And I know these words sound like synonyms, they sound really close, but if consolidation is about taking a number of different things and trying to just reduce it down to maybe just one or two things, aggregation is different. It's about saying, okay, well, you've got, maybe dozens and dozens of things here, whether they're dozens of different apps or dozens of different data sources or dozens of different kinds of customer touch points. And instead of trying to just compress them all down to one or two, what we're trying to do is wrap them around some sort of technology that lets us interface to them in a much easier way. It's almost like we're interfacing to something that has the best of both worlds. It's sort of simplified to a single interface, like we kind of wanted with consolidation, but at the same time it has this incredible richness and depth of variety that doesn't get lost, as it would with traditional consolidation. And so, get out of the theoretical here. The cloud data warehouse is the perfect example of this sort of aggregation. You can always tell aggregation because the more things you add to it, the more value you get out of it. And this is the case. Like, the more different data sources we are attaching to our cloud data warehouse, the more different destinations where we are leveraging that universal data layer, the more value we get out of it. So it's a really nice flywheel.
Very cool. And then we wanted to make sure we took a moment to pull a stat from one of your surveys that we thought was really helpful to give people some context in terms of how folks are approaching this today. Can you tell us a little bit about this data point?
Yeah, this stat was from our martech Day report a few months back, which, again, you were very kind to be one of our expert interviews on. So this stat is for the number of our audience who implemented a cloud data warehouse or cloud data lakehouse as part of their martech stack. We asked them, okay, if you've got a cloud data warehouse in your stack, how much of the rest of your martech stack is integrated with it? And 61.3% said more than half, the majority of the rest of the apps in their martech stack were integrated. And this is exactly what you want to see in that aggregation pattern. It's not just about implementing cloud data warehouse. It's about making sure that, wow, as many possible sources of data are feeding into that. And as you're feeding more of those sources of data, the ability to leverage that in more other applications across the rest of your stack, that's where the power of aggregation really gets unlocked. And so when I see this stat of 61.3% who have the majority of their martech stack integrated with their cloud data warehouse, that really, to me, is the evidence that the inflection point we were talking about earlier of like, okay, we've now developed the technical maturity to actually be able to execute on this universal data layer.
Excellent. And then, speaking of taking advantage of this aggregated data, where does AI come in? Everyone loves talking about AI. AI is so powerful. We think about it all the time. And I think there are so many outcomes of it that we haven't even unlocked and begun to unlock. So tell us from your seat, where does AI fit into this story, this inflection point, and our opportunity to leverage this data?
Yeah, it is definitely the topic of the year. Clearly the topic of the decade, I suspect. Well, again, like, everything that you want to do with AI, at the end of the day, has to be fed by data. And this runs the entire gamut of things behind the scenes. So for instance, like this ability to use AI to democratize more of the ability for marketers to self-service more of the answers to questions they have about the analytics, of performance of particular campaigns or programs, or if they want to start to construct concepts of, audiences for particular campaigns, instead of having to like file a whole bunch of tickets for, expert data engineers to go off and assemble that over some multi-day. Just the ability to increasingly let AI be able to self-service more of those questions, more of those needs, more of those ideas. That's massive. But then as you also start to look about applying AI into more customer-facing experiences, again, the same thing holds true. People don't use the AI experiences, with your company because they want what they would get from ChatGPT or, Gemini or something like that. Those tools out there, what they want from your business is something that is very specific, to who they are, what it is your business offers, and to really be able to deliver those sorts of AI-powered experiences, you have to get the data, into these systems. And so this is why it's just, again, like the timing of this couldn't be perfect, that if this AI revolution, with generative AI, was happening 2 years ago, it would have hit a lot more barriers a lot more quickly because we just, for most companies, did not have the data infrastructure and the data plumbing in place to be able to feed a lot of these ideas that we're now, in a position to leverage.
Yeah, right on. We at GrowthLoop, we think about this all the time, all the time. And I love how you say that we're at this point now where we can really leverage it. we at GrowthLoop, we're super thankful for our cloud partnerships. They are everything to us, and we think about, well, how can our powers combined really start opening up some amazing opportunities to leverage AI. To speak to the marketers in the room, I think marketers are getting really, really good at, I would say, content uses of AI, content creation, efficiencies, things like that. I look forward to a new generation of data-driven uses for AI, and I get excited about thinking about how through this data aggregation, through leveraging the data cloud, through putting these AI technologies on top, what type of marketing impact can come from that. And I think back to exactly the example you gave at the beginning of this, that best customer interaction. I do think it's AI on top of the best data resource that someone can have is going to be what unlocks those incredible customer experiences.
I think one thing I would add is going back to the very beginning of what made digital so exciting for marketing. It's that it dramatically reduced the cost of experimentation. Like running campaigns in the real world where you had to put up physical billboards, rearrange store layouts, the world of atoms, very expensive and slow to try things, versus the world of bits, super fast and easy. And a lot of the innovation that we've seen in marketing over the past 20, 25 years has been a result of that. Even things as simple as A/B testing, and all that fun. But the truth is, it's still only been a fraction of the potential of experimentation that is possible, because the time it would take us to, all right, even explore to find the data, to what would this hypothesis be? Can we, validate this with some previous data? Okay, even once we track down that data, now we start, idealizing, our campaign, but, the process of creating it, maybe we need more and more specialists to be able to do that. And so, yes, digital allowed us to experiment a lot more quickly, but it's with AI here that we're starting to see this really order of magnitude, if not 2 orders of magnitude, of superpowers in reducing the time to be able to put these experiments together and dramatically expanding, the set of individuals in the marketing organization who more and more have the capability to create these experiments, on their own. Nobel Prize-winning chemist Linus Pauling, who's done more than a few innovative things in his life, was once asked, how do you come up, with all these great ideas? And his answer was, I'm paraphrasing here, essentially, well, I come up with a crap ton more, that aren't great. The only way you really discover great ideas is by being able to iterate, through a much wider field of possibilities. And so to me, this is the superpower that a lot of these AI capabilities are giving marketers, is it is going to amplify by at least an order of magnitude, the speed and the number of experiments that we can run to find the ones that are the real winners. And that's really, then inheriting the mantle of digital possibility that got us started on this journey in the first place.
I love it. It's those who are able to learn the fastest win the most through that speed, through that facilitated by AI. Well, now I'm inspired. Now I'm curious. I'm thinking back to your best customer experience, last best customer experience anecdote you gave before. How good can customer experiences become when fueled and powered by AI? What do you see in the future? What should we expect from businesses in terms of how strong our customer interactions can be with this type of technology supporting us?
Yeah, first and foremost, it is about continuity. Don't get me wrong, personalization is great, and there's a lot that AI is going to continue to empower in delivering more and more personalized experiences. But for a lot of customers, what really makes something personalized is the fact that there's a continuity in whatever given touch point or experience they have with everything else they've done with you in the past. And this is, again, first step of that is actually making sure we get the data from all those other different touch points and experiences so it's accessible somewhere. But turns out this is a lot of data, so you can't just like throw it all on a screen, and have, some poor call center rep trying to, sort through that all. You really do need AI to then sit as a layer on top of that to be able to provide the insight and to be able to surface up the relevant components of that customer's previous experience. And again, some of this will, surface through purely self-service experiences on the website or with the mobile app. Others will be, with human beings, when we're on the phone with them, when we're in the store with them, and the ability for AI to help augment, those call center reps, those folks in the, face-to-face engagement with the customer. Because again, people want to have human interactions. It's very clear, AI is not going to have us all just living in a world of talking to chatbots. Like we crave that human interaction, particularly at, key stages, throughout our customer experience. But if you can now empower the human agents with a little bit of these amplifications, of insights, from AI, then they're really going to be in a position to be able to deliver to those customers the best of both worlds.
I love it. Augmenting what humans can do, bringing those powerful insights and bringing it to life. I love that. So for those who are psyched about this vision and want to do it, they say, I want to bring this to life. What's next? What steps can folks take to bring this to life at their companies, and what do you think is the path forward?
Yeah, I think one of my perception of this situation is we've gone through decades upon decades here of digital innovation, but not all waves of digital innovation were at the same scale. The age of personal computers, boy, that transformed a whole nature, of work. The internet and the web, okay, this really fundamentally transformed the world in ways that, frankly, we're still seeing the ripple effects of today. And while there were a lot of other changes that happened since the, big, unveiling of the web, in many ways, a lot of them were a little bit more incremental. They didn't necessarily require us to sort of rethink from first principles, our organization, our strategy, the way we work. We just kept iterating and improving, based on, now we can do this with these mobile devices. Okay, now we can do this, with access to a larger set of data. I think AI is going to be a little bit more like that web revolution, like the PC revolution, where it's not just an incremental change in how we work. This ability to connect so many different parts of our business together and to really be able to harness that data and intelligence throughout the entire organization very rapidly. I think that's going to change, the way we collaborate inside our organization, the way we think about strategies, that increasingly span beyond departmental boundaries. And so I would say, one of the first things, just recommending to people as we enter this next stage is to really lean in on the people dimension of this, on the organizational side of this, even the organizational. This is like a highfalutin term consultants use, organizational capital. But, really developing, the ways we work and the talent, investing in, more training, investing in more time for teams to be able to collaborate and experiment together across those traditional boundaries. I just think that's so incredibly important because that's going to be the wave, that people who are embracing change at that level, are going to be able to harness this technology in ways that folks who are just keeping it in, their old way of working, I think are going to miss a lot of the benefit.
Yeah, and then speak to the people who will be driving that change. We really wanted this event today to be all about helping enable and inspire change makers that we know are really thinking about how to bring this forward, how to change their organizations. What do you encourage them to do? What inspiration do you want to give them to help bring this change forward?
Yeah, so one of the things I would say is, there's that, in technology, we've always had this innovation diffusion curve, the thing where we got the term of like, okay, well, there's the early adopters, and then after that it crosses the chasm to the early majority, and then the late majority, and then at the very, very tail would be the laggards. And in a lot of ways, while early adopters were always celebrated for, pushing things forward, I think it's fairly easy for a lot of folks to say like, okay, that's nice, we appreciate you early adopters doing that. I'm going to wait for the early majority, because that innovation diffusion would typically happen over a pretty long period of time. It would happen over like a 10-year period. So you could give, the early adopters a few years to figure it out, and then, we'll still be like ahead of the rest of the majority. Well, we're in an environment where the pace of change and innovation is essentially compressing that innovation diffusion curve. That, innovations here no longer take 10 years, to play out. They maybe take half that time or less that time, And so one of the things that's done is that's essentially squeezed out the middle. You're pretty much either going to have to pick a camp of saying like, okay, we're going to lean in to really staying current with what these possibilities are. It's a little like the blurring of the line between was an early adopter and the early majority, it starts to blend together. And then vice versa on the other side, like the difference between late majority and laggard, that starts to blend too. And so I think for change makers, oh my goodness, like this is such an amazing time for you, because you've got all these, it's not just one big wave, of AI. It's like all these multiple little waves of how we're using it in different, contexts and different capabilities. All of these are happening here. All of them are happening in that compressed, innovation time frame. And so for change makers to be like, hey, listen, this isn't just, us being early adopters. This is us making sure that our companies are staying on the front half, not the back half, because you're either, with the folks who are pushing this forward, or you're kind of as a laggard. So here's to the change makers.
Here's to the change makers. I love that, the compressed timeline, and to being the one that pushes your organization on the front half of that curve. That's huge. And the huge role and responsibility that can be, and impact you can have. I love that. And then, so tell us more about this moment, what we can do, and what you hope the future looks like long term.
I think, so what you can do today, one of the folks I follow, I suspect a number of people in the audience here do as well too, Ethan Malik, who's a professor at the Wharton School and has become a little bit of an internet celebrity over the past year and a half, is just being one of the people who's just doing a lot of writing and experimentation with, these frontier models, ChatGPT and Claude and whatnot. If you don't follow him, please do. Great content pretty much every other week. But if I was going to pick one thing that he is constantly emphasizing, it's that you've got to get your hands dirty. You've got to get in and play with this, that he finds too often when talking to executive and senior leaders, like conceptually, they're like, oh yeah, this AI thing is important, and yeah, we should probably be, using these tools. But they themselves don't actually use it, or they only use it like in very, low doses. And as a result, they don't really have a feel, for what's possible. And as this, the innovation of, these frontier models keeps advancing quickly, they don't necessarily keep up with like, oh, I used to ask it this, and I didn't think it did a good job, but now, oh, this new model's come out, I retried this a different way, and oh, wow, that's possible. So, advice that I'm just shamelessly stealing from Ethan Malik here is play with these technologies, get your hands dirty. It's the only way to really start to wrap your head around what's possible. As far as what I hope for short term, long term, I think it goes back to just this, what we were talking about earlier of both accelerating this pace of experimentation, but also widening the field of who is able to do that innovation. I know there's always, concerns around like, okay, as AI starts to, do more and more of these like day-to-day slog tasks, like, is what's going to be the role of my job? Well, I mean, hopefully it's not too much of that slogging, that what we really want to be able to do is unleash more and more of our imagination. I think of marketers as like the perfect imagination creation, beings, that they're constantly coming up with ideas in the back of their head. Just for so long, it's just been constrained as to how many of those it was even practical to like give voice to, much less, track down, much less be able to actually execute, And I think as we start to realize that, wow, these barriers and these boundaries that we had to these things floating through our imagination, the barriers are just dropping. I think people are going to just lean into this and have an incredible next decade, of inventing things in marketing that, are going to blow everyone away. I think the other thing that I'm pretty excited about, and again, it's like the timing is just right, is now that we have more and more of these technologies and they're all getting connected throughout our organization, and we're starting to think more and more about not just the craft of individual pieces, but how we orchestrate the whole. I really do think this is a task that a lot of these AI technologies are going to help us with. We had 10 years or so that, we often referred to as the age of big data. Oh my goodness, there's going to be a lot of data. What do we do about that? We don't talk about that much anymore. Not because we don't have big data anymore, but we've kind of been like, okay, this is just, this is the new normal. I really feel the stage we're in right now is something I would call big ops, which it's the volume and the variety and the velocity of all these processes that are happening in parallel. A lot of things with, this next wave of AI agents is going to accelerate that. The way in which we bring cohesion to that is also going to come from AI that, as long as we've got all the data connected, is going to be in a position to help us orchestrate that. So, I don't know, I'm pretty bullish that the next 10 years are going to be a wild ride, but overall an incredibly productive one for all of us.
Oh, it's going to be huge. And I love it. So many great thoughts here. Augmenting our people, increasing our imagination, our experimentation, bringing that cohesion. I'm with you, Scott. AI has a huge role to play, and I love that we're having a discussion about bringing data. And I would say once companies' unique data to that, because when you combine the power of AI with a company's unique data, I mean, that's when so many things are opened up and so much is unlocked. So I love that future that you painted. I think there's a lot to be excited about, and so much opportunity for these change makers, these individuals who want to see this change forward to make. So I'm psyched.
It's going to be a fun time.
It will be a fun time. And speaking of fun times, Scott, you are fantastic. Thank you so much for being our keynote for our first inaugural GrowthLoop Live. It has been an absolute pleasure having this conversation, hearing about your vision, your advice for folks. It has been incredible. It's an honor to share the stage with you and talk with you about this great topic. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca. Have a great rest of GrowthLoop Live.
Thank you. So for everyone continuing with the fun, please go ahead and join us in the lobby, and we will see you for the next session. Thanks so much.